It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
All right, it's a Friday. Let's get right to it. I am Steve Deace, as World Series champion, future Hall of Famer Curt Schilling. Each day here on The Blaze, we talk sports, 25 minutes on the clock. Get to as many of the day's sports topics as we possibly can, beginning right now. So, Curt, I wanted to wait to address this issue until we found out exactly how severe the injury is. And the verdict is now in. Zion Williamson, the all-world Duke basketball player. There you see the freak injury that happened there. 30 seconds into the game against North Carolina, which, by the way, set the record. That game set the record for the most watched in-week college basketball game, 4.5 million viewers ever on ESPN. Yeah, I just read that just a few minutes ago. He's wearing those new Paul George shoes from Nike.
Yep.
His shoe blows out, and it looked like there was a possible knee blowout as well. He has been diagnosed now with a grade 1 sprain day to day. So we'd like to get your perspective on that as a former pro athlete. When you hear that, what you think that means.
Two things.
Go ahead.
All right. First off, a sprain is excuse me, a misleading word. A sprain there's a tear. So to be clear, a sprain is not like the lengthening or stretching. There's a tear involved. Anytime you sprain something, there's a tear of tissue involved.
But this would be a tear that has not structurally damaged the knee,
right?
Correct?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. That, as far as you know. But I will also tell you this: sports science, unless you go in and look, is one of the most inexact things in the world. It just is. But my guess is with that joint, there's so many different ways to test stability that it isn't something, hugely significant for him. However, that's a different story for Nike.
What's your and by the way, I think they lost like over $1 billion in stock value since this injury. But what you're seeing with Zion Williamson?
Hey, were you being sarcastic or did they?
No, they have seriously
Really?
lost over $1 billion in stock value since this injury. So when you look at Zion Williamson, for folks that don't follow maybe college basketball as closely as, say, I do, what he was or has been so far is essentially if LeBron James had gone to college basketball. If Kevin Garnett had gone to college basketball, those guys played before we had the one and done rule. This is what it looks like. If Anthony Davis had not played with 3 other top, 5 picks when he was with Kentucky as a freshman, the Brow, that's what he is. You're talking about a force of nature. And if you look at his body type there, you're looking at really, and there's been a lot of these kinds of comparisons, a younger, svelter version of what Charles Barkley was coming out of Auburn back in the day. And then you saw in the game when he went out, if I had told you going into this game that North Carolina would shoot 2 from 20 on the road and win by double digits, you'd have told me I'm smoking a high-grade form of crack cocaine. All right? I will guarantee you that I've not even researched it. I'll lay down a marker right now. No one, since Mike Krzyzewski's been the coach at Duke, no one has they've had the 3-point rule in college basketball since 1987. That's 32 years. He's coached all but one of those seasons when he set out for back surgery, okay? No one has won a game in Cameron Indoor Stadium shooting 2 for 20 from 3. No one. No one has done that. North Carolina did it by double digits because they got to the rim every time they wanted. They dominated on the glass. There was no other post-up player for Duke. So you see his value, and there are 2 other guys, Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett may be the number 2 pick in the draft. There's talk that Cam Reddish may be a lottery pick as well, but no one else at Duke offered what he did, and you saw North Carolina just carve them apart without him in the game. So this has touched off the whole debate now again about should guys sit out, should they play? I want to get your perspective on whether this heightens changes. The NBA does the one and done rule. It is not a college basketball rule. It is a collectively bargained rule in the NBA. They've actually been working for they announced about a year ago they wanted to get rid of it. And it just so happened that the timing of when they sent the proposal to the CBA just lined up almost exactly with Zion Williamson's injury when this had been talked about for about a year. So the one and done rule is probably on its last legs. But what are your thoughts, Curt?
Yes, to a lot of it. Here's the thing. I would love to tell you that I have a crystal ball and I'm an end all be all kind of a source for athletes and their mindset. But I don't understand. I can't fathom high school to the pros. It doesn't register for me. Like,
because you come from a sport that has a well-recognized, organized minor league system, correct?
But when I think about where I was mentally as a high school senior and where I had to be when 1993, 7 years later, as a professional pitcher in the big leagues, the amount of stuff that happened in that 7 years is off the charts for me. So I can't relate to that. But I did hear somebody, and you'll probably know who it was, but I heard somebody yesterday on the radio basically recommend, dude, drop out of school. You're wasting it. This is absolutely pointless. You're going to be the number one pick, whether you play the rest of the year or not. Why? And last night was one of those things, right? I mean, you remember who were the two big picks that came out? Greg Oden and the other one. But Oden ended up being hurt.
He was the first kind of Liz Frank injury guy, and he never recovered from it. Yeah,
never. I mean, last night could have been it for him. I mean, so apparently I heard he had a $75 million deal offer on the table from Nike.
It's going to be a lot more after their shoe causes,
double that.
Yeah, his knee injury. Yeah.
Well, it's the only way they save face is by him wearing their Nike after this.
Yep.
And if I'm him, I'd never put another pair of Nikes on.
In fact, if let's say he had an injury that was so devastating he couldn't play again, they'd have to still pay him that to endorse their shoe for any other athlete, the next to Zion Williamson, to be willing to wear that. Yeah.
Well, if you're a senior in high school and you're one of these 5-star blue chip guys, one of the 5 guys that maybe could go straight to the NBA, are you putting Nikes on? I get that it's a rare event, but I don't care. I don't want
It's funny that we don't seem to care that Nike is paying pre-teens in Thailand slightly less than they'd make as Bangkok hookers to make these shoes every day. We don't seem to care about that until Zion Williamson's blows out, which has happened maybe once in 50 years. And now suddenly we're really concerned about the quality of their shoe. I get that.
I'm not, because I jumped ship when they did the whole Colin Kaepernick debacle. I thought that they sold out.
Maybe to you. There's a whole other America out there that doesn't see things your way.
Right. To me, this is hashtag karma.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it.
Here's the thing that bothers me about all of this. I have grown beyond tired of watching people tell these young people what they ought to do with their lives. Yeah. And there's this notion that these guys are all victims. Zion Williamson has an $8 million insurance policy paid for by the university. Okay. Now that's nothing compared to the money he would make if he got to play in the NBA. It's also more than 99.9999% of this planet will ever see in their lifetimes. All right. He would, if he never got to play again because of this, he'd collect that $8 million. He would then be a much in demand speaker. His life would be he would be a prince among men. He's not a victim. Now, I have no problem if him and his family get together and say, well, here, let me finish this. Let him live his life. It's his gift. It's his God-given gift. If him and his family get together and say, what we want to do with it is be the number one pick in the draft and walk away, that's their decision, and they live with the consequences of it. If they get together and say, you know what, even if I blow it out and can't play, I only get one chance to play in the NCAA tournament. It's one of the biggest sporting events in this country, in the world. It's a bigger sporting event than the NBA Finals, frankly, Curt.
Right.
Okay, it is. Next to the Super Bowl, it's the biggest sporting event in the country.
The Finals isn't even close.
All right, so if he says, I only get one chance to do this and I want to do it, and if the worst case scenario is I walk away with a minimum $8 million payday, that's still a pretty good life, then they get to make that decision too. Why do we feel as if we have a say in this?
No, I think I don't. I think you and I agree. I don't want to hear a sports pundit tell a college athlete, because generally a sports pundit is never actually suited up above JV in high school anyway. But when a guy in the NBA says it, or when I say something in reference to a baseball player signing somewhere,
sure,
I try to do it with some foresight and some hindsight. And I can't remember who it was yesterday, but I heard it on
that
Fox
picture
News.
Of that shoe is incredible, by the way.
Oh my God,
it's just incredible.
That's $1 billion break.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my point is, these guys in the NBA, a lot of them, most of them, well, I don't know most, a lot of them have done the very same thing he's doing, which is, go play a year in college for whatever. And a lot of them are saying, dude, it's worthless. And the guy, I don't remember who it was yesterday, but he was using some coarse language to say it's BS. It's ridiculous. You don't stop, quit. Because you're looking at 100, 200, 300, $500 million when you count salaries, shoe deal, blah, blah, blah.
This weekend, Michigan's going to mark the 30th anniversary of its only NCAA tournament championship team from 1989. Okay. 9 guys that were on that roster ended up playing either in the NBA or professional basketball on planet Earth somewhere. One of the guys that didn't, Rob Pelinka, is now the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay? Almost all of those guys, including Pelinka, are coming back to Ann Arbor here 30 years later. Why? Because some of them, 3 of them were top 10 picks. There were 3 top 10 picks off that team that made millions of dollars.
It was Rose, Weber, and who?
No, you're thinking of the Fab Five. I'm going back to 89. Glenn Rice, Ramil Robinson, Terry Mills were all top 10 picks. Okay. So those guys all made millions of dollars. And yet they are leaping at the chance to come back here 30 years later and remember something that they'll never get a chance to do ever. Glenn Rice went on and won NBA championships with the Lakers, with Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen. I'll tell you this.
Kurt, what do you remember more? I'm asking. I don't know. What's more memorable to you? Winning a World Series with your guys or signing a $15 million free agent contract?
So listen to this. I skipped college. I went to junior college for a year. I was going to sign out of high school, had an accident that summer, and wanted to be drafted and play. So I just went to JUCO for a year because you were eligible for the draft. Mm-hmm. The year I spent in junior college was one of the top 5 years of my life. The team that I spent, I'm still very, very dear friends with every member of that team. I would argue that in my top 10 wins and losses, a win and a loss from that team is including everything I've ever done is in that mix. It was my first year away from home, and it was my only year away from home before I became professional. And it was a year that I'll never, ever forget, and I'll always be grateful for. And I would have been, I don't know that I would have made the big leagues if I had not done that. That's the reason I go to college, and I tell these kids to go to college, because
I don't have a problem with whatever decision he makes. What I'm starting to resent, because see, I don't really think this is about. I'm starting to resent this notion. Don't do anything that causes any risk, because what I think this is largely is a worldview that resents masculinity, that resents meritocracy, that resents risk taking. This is classic Keynesianism, guaranteed outcomes rather than equality of opportunities. Do nothing. We're going to talk. In fact, let's go to the next story. Jim Boeheim. Life happens. Jim Boeheim's just driving down a street. This is an example of you can't avoid risk in life. He's driving down an interstate. Now, here's a multi-million-dollar coach driving himself, all right? After a huge win against Louisville on national television, a Hall of Fame coach, driving down a wintry interstate. There's a massive snowbank, doesn't see an accident, tries to avoid it, and then a group of pedestrians have come out of their cars who were involved in the accident. He hits one of them and kills them, all right? Now, the cops come. They've give him the breathalyzer. It's just a tragedy. It's a random accident tragedy. This notion that we can eliminate risk in life. I'm not saying be a moron. I'm not saying Bryce Harper should be out there, doing skydiving or cliff swimming, cave swimming right now. Okay, but we can't just eliminate all risk. And if Zion Williamson's, the worst thing that happens to him here is he collects an $8 million insurance policy. That's a pretty good life, Right. Ask Jim Boeheim in this story here if you can eliminate all risk. Now, ESPN's College Game Day was supposed to be from the Carrier Dome for the Duke game this weekend. Syracuse has asked that they obviously not come to show respect here. Boeheim doesn't obviously want to be seen, yucking it up when there's a family burying a loved one. So how can you even put yourself in a situation of how you would focus on your season after something like this?
So I don't know why, but there have been times in my life where I've thought about, especially when I'm driving, being extra careful because I don't want to get in an accident. Obviously, you don't want to get in an accident, but it's different for someone like me. When I get in an accident, there's a chance that it could be the lead story on ESPN, right? And not that and everybody deals with that, but I've often wondered about like driving at night when it's tough to see on the road and thinking about my life if I did something like this, especially given, the social animosity towards me as a conservative in New England. Like, I can't imagine that stuff, much less taking somebody else's life. Mm-hmm. And again, not, it was a pure 100% accident from everything we've said. I mean, he called the police, he passed out. And so I feel bad for both parties, but one of these parties is going to go home. That's what, it's like I said, when you look at this generation and you talk about value and you talk about living life to its fullest, there's a lot of people that don't understand that not only is your future not promised, but tomorrow isn't. How many people have left the house for the last time thinking they were leaving the house for the last time?
Yeah, I think if you check the death rate, it remains at 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just
nobody escapes it. Right.
It's just, I feel bad for everybody involved. And you think about it, it's only a story because he's famous. This happens every day to everybody. I mean, much like the Smollett case, you heard the assistant deputy yesterday in Chicago. I wish the media would give this much attention to the kids that are gunned down in our streets every day. Mm-hmm. And you realize what a tragedy it is, what a joke it is that the media has done what they've done and gone where they've gone. And it's a testament to who we are, I think, and that's not a good thing.
Sticking with college basketball as a theme, we introduced this stat a few weeks ago, but now we're into the nitty-gritty now. Sunday will mark 3 weeks until Selection Sunday, so we'll have a lot more college basketball information here on We Talk Sports. So if you go back, Ken Palm, the number one analytics site in all of college basketball, since it debuted in 2002, since Ken Palm debuted, every national champion but one, that was the year under Coach Kevin Ollie that UConn went on that amazing run where they win the Big East, or win the American Conference to get in, and then they won 6 in a row after that. Yep. That's the only team that's won the NCAA tournament that wasn't in the top 20 in Ken Palm's nationally, or top 20 nationally in both of Ken Palm's offensive and defensive efficiency numbers. Right now, that's 5 teams in college basketball: Virginia, Duke, Michigan State, North Carolina, and Kentucky. Maryland is the next closest team. They're 21st in offense, 19th in defense. So that's something to keep in mind. This weekend is a huge card of college basketball and a lot of big-time matchups. It's going to feel a little bit like kind of an NCAA tournament weekend. I was actually messing around on YouTube the other night, and I found a clip. Remember when ESPN used to have the first 2 days of the tournament, pre-satellite days? And, and if my grades were good and I didn't have a high school basketball game going on, my mom would call me in sick so I could just stay home those 2 days and watch those games.
This was the beginning. I was the pool guy in baseball. So I had to go copy sheets for everybody and collect them and keep organized, and this was in baseball. It was a big deal because you're talking about pools that were $100,000 for the winners and losers in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's where you lost me. Anyway, I found a clip because I was looking for stuff on the '89 NCAA tournament because it's Michigan's reunion weekend, and a guy had up there on his YouTube page all of ESPN's in-studio breaks with Tim Brando and Dick Vitale from the first round of the 1989 NCAA tournament as they go around to all the games and all the stories. And it was it's kind of hilarious going back and watching that from when I was a kid now, 30 years later. Let's go to the NBA. I want to get your take on this stat.
I can't wait I've been waiting for this one.
So I love counterintuitive data because it's almost always right. Conventional wisdom is almost always wrong. Yep. Okay. Public perception's almost always incorrect. Okay. So there's been this notion the last couple of years since Kevin Durant left OKC, and largely left OKC because this guy, Russell Westbrook, took too many shots and figured he had to go hook up with the Warriors to finally win a championship. And it worked a couple times for him. Can't, hate the game, not the player, right? He's got a couple of rings. And so since Durant has left, Russell Westbrook has essentially become Oscar Robertson resurrected. I mean, he's averaging triple doubles, the kinds of stuff we haven't seen in this league from a stat sheet. I mean, imagine if Magic Johnson didn't have a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy with him. These are the numbers he'd probably put up, right? If he was kind of a one-man show, right? Yep. And that's what Russell Westbrook's been doing. And so there's this notion out there that he's selfish. All right, drove Kevin Durant away, and he's selfish for that. He's looking up at the scoreboard. And remember those old Budweiser commercials? Leon can't do everything. Remember those?
Yeah.
I love those commercials. That he's kind of the Leon guy from those. He's looking up. Oh, I need one more assist. Hey, you hang out under the basket. I'll throw it to you to get my triple double. Right. So R.J. Bell, the noted sports handicapper, went back and took a look at, is this true? And this is his data. Check this out. When Russell Westbrook gets a triple double, the Oklahoma City Thunder win more than 70% of the time. They cover the spread about 67% of the time.
Much less important to them than you.
Yes.
Right.
But that also then goes to show they're maximizing their performance. When those two numbers align like that, then you are really maximizing your performance as a team. That means you're not getting a lot of fluky wins, okay? When Westbrook doesn't get a triple-double, the Thunder are a sub-500 team overall, and they cover the spread less than 40% of the time. Now, as a guy that knows a thing or two about winning in team sports, what's your reaction when you see those kinds of numbers?
So I didn't go to MIT. I'm not a real. I know numbers, but I'm not a NASA level mathematician. But I've always assumed that winning 70% of the time was better than winning 40% of the time.
That's traditionally, I know we are. Okay. I know we don't know what a boy or a girl is, but I still think we know that is 70 is more than 40.
So let me ask you this. And it's funny because we're even having this conversation is pathetic. What are the three numbers, the three statistics you must acquire double digits in to get a triple double?
Well, you can use all of them. Like you could do blocks, but the best traditionally are points, rebounds, and assists. Okay. Yes.
What on this planet is selfish about a rebound or an assist?
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you. Okay,
so two of those three are always unselfish, and the first points can kind of go back and forth, depending on the situation, right? Okay.
No, and generally,
like when James Harden is dribbling 9 times from 30 feet from the basket and chucks it up, and it goes in, it's not selfish. When it doesn't go in, it's selfish, right? That's kind of how that works, right?
Okay, no, that's exactly how it works. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, this is another byproduct of the world today. When you have to talk about sports on a network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you have stupid people saying stupid things.
And you got to look for hot takes. You got to look for flashpoints.
You've got to say stuff.
You can't just actually look at the data, let it decide, because then the conversation ends in 30 seconds and you've got an 8-minute block to fill, right?
ESPN probably hates our show because we actually just talk about logical stuff and we don't disagree with each other for the sake of disagreeing with each other. And that's all they do. And they make themselves look stupid doing it. Tom Brady.
You basically described pro wrestling, meaning in pro wrestling, the contact is real, but the outcome is scripted, right?
Right.
So they're really arguing, but they're like, hey, you're going to say this, and then I'm going to say that, and I'm going to take this angle, and you're going to take that one. Yeah.
Right. And that's how you get Max Kellerman saying that Tom Brady's the worst quarterback left in the playoffs.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's how you get just a numerous amount of Stephen A.
Curt, as we like to say here on my show, that bait ain't going to click itself, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, G? That bait ain't going to click itself. All right.
It's all about.
Max Kellerman says Brady's the GOAT doesn't generate clicks. Max Kellerman saying Brady's the worst quarterback left in the playoffs. You're like, what a numbnuts. I'm clicking. What an idiot says something like that. It worked.
Yeah, see,
hate the game, not the player.
I don't. I'm that guy that goes, okay, I know a headline that's a clickbait headline when I see it because I've been guilty and been put in that position. So, it's just. But again, that's what that whole station thrives on. That's the only reason Jamel Hill stayed there. Was because the stupidity that was coming out of their mouths on a daily basis was getting people to turn the channel on, and it's backfired on them in a good way. But it's funny. Like I said. Dennis Rodman was apparently a selfish player because all he did was go, gather 20 rebounds a night.
I can see why people thinking going and getting other players' misses is a selfish act.
Yeah.
Let's close this out with some baseball. The rumors section at CBS Sports yesterday reported that Bryce Harper has already turned down, quote, multiple. That was the quote. $300 million offers akin to what Manny Machado signed a couple days ago. So we ask you as we close it out today, are you buy it? You do buy it.
Oh, he has. Yes, he has. I've talked to a couple people that were uncomfortable and confident that I know he's turned down at least one. I also
do you know from which team?
No.
Okay.
But there was more than one team. I believe the person I heard this from as well. The Phillies have an offer on the table for $330 million for 10 years. So who knows?
What's going through his mind right now? Well, why is this taking so long? Because we've been under the assumption he hasn't been getting these kinds of offers, and that's why they've been waiting.
Well, if you're a hard worker, which he is, you're missing the part of spring training you want to miss every year. There's no rush. Unless a team.
See, I'm glad you said that, because I used to think before the salary cap, when guys were holding out in the NFL all the time, Lawrence Taylor held out every year. Yeah. I used to just literally sit there and think to myself as a kid, dude, because I was doing 2-a-days for 78 or junior high football, and those sucked when I was 12. Yeah. All right, I can't imagine what you're doing with Bill Parcells before the Players Association had any balls, and so it's the mid '80s, and Bill Parcells can literally molest you out there if he wants. I just thought he was holding out because he didn't want to go to training camp, basically.
And that's a lot of guys have done that forever. I would tell you that I believe there'll be a decision made within the first week of games starting, because those are the at-bats you don't want to miss.
Spring training games you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I still believe it's going to be Philadelphia. I've also heard, and I'm not sure how much confidence I put in this, that the Padres are also in on this.
Well, if they were to get both, that would change the trajectory of that division, because it is pretty wide open right now.
Yeah, because Manny Machado's not a 30-win player.
All right, great stuff, man. See you on Monday.
Have a great weekend.
Take care.